Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar. Today we'll be talking about mastering global data retention compliance. For this webinar, we teamed up with Filerskeepers, and today we will demonstrate how companies can leverage Filerskeepers data retention knowledge base in collaboration with Data Privacy Manager. Today our speakers are Marijan and Wanne. You maybe know Marijan from our last webinars. Marijan, he is a DPM product owner. He has over 15 years of experience in the field of data management and data protection. And the second speaker is Wanne. He is a CEO and founder of Filerskeepers. He is a top-tier data and tech lawyer. He has over a decade of work experience as a legal practitioner as well. Today, Marijan and Wanne will share their knowledge with all of you and answer all of your questions. So feel free to write all of the questions you have during the webinar in the chat, and we will provide the answers to all of them at the end and our Q&A session. So Marijan, I'm leaving the floor to you. The mic is yours.
Thank you, Petra, for such a nice introduction, and thank you, Wanne, for joining us. Wanne is everything Petra said. He's also a superstar when it comes to data retention and retention records. But if you don't know him, if you don't know about that, you're going to see when he starts talking. So I'll just take a little bit of time to give an introduction to everyone who maybe doesn't know about Data Privacy Manager and what we do. We are a SaaS company. We have a product called Data Privacy Manager. And from the beginning, we have designed the platform to protect individuals' privacy and to minimize privacy compliance risks for companies. Today, we have more than 150 enterprise customers in more than 30 countries in Europe, North America, and Africa. And we are visible by the top analyst companies. So whether it's around consent and preference management, or managing data retention and data removal, or managing privacy program, helping privacy professionals, DPOs, do their job. So what we do in Legit is the name of the company. Data Privacy Manager is our product. What we do in Legit is, besides doing the implementation of Data Privacy Manager, which is helping to automate privacy management, we kind of help our customers understand what the biggest risks and priorities are when it comes to managing their data protection and privacy program. So we do something called SOPA, State of Privacy Assessment, and give them a roadmap and help them understand what they should do next. Because for sure, when it comes to privacy, there is a lot you can do. So it's never good to do a big bang. You should prioritize and focus on important things. And also, when it comes to the overall maintenance of the privacy program, we do help our customers with trainings and help them with whether it's a supervisory authority audit, whether they need to do some kind of forensics. Anything that involves data management, and privacy management is something we can help with. Now, I want to focus specifically on implementation of DPM and just shortly recap and say that we have 4 different products on the platform. The first one, data mapping, is all about discovering and mapping all personal data in the company. We use our proprietary technology powered by machine learning. These are machine learning models we have developed in an ethical way by generating personal data sets and using only real personal data in a compliant way. So if you need to start by gaining control over collecting, storing, and managing and processing personal data in the company, check out our data discovery product. It works in any language, any script, both for structured and unstructured data. Now, next thing is privacy program management, which manages or helps manage all aspects of data protection compliance program from the DPO perspective. It promotes collaboration and helps the privacy team be more efficient with centralized records of processing activities, privacy assessment, automation, management of data processors, central register of privacy risks, central repository of identified personal data incidents, and data subject request management. The third product is consent management, consent and preference management used for consent mastering. And that's the only way to have an end-to-end automation of consent reviews, consent collection, and use of data collected with consents. Everything in one place, one single source of truth. And finally, data removal. This is not nice to have. It is very necessary for companies because every company should automate the removal of personal data once they lose business and legal justification for processing. And this is what Wanne is going to talk a little bit more about. Now, how do we use Filerskeepers as the data provider in DPM? We use Filerskeepers to fuel both our privacy program management when it comes to configuring processing activities and how long you need to keep specific categories of data for specific processing, but also for the fourth product, data removal, when it comes to orchestrating and automating the whole process of anonymizing or deleting personal data in different systems. We use Filerskeepers as big help for configuring the rules about data retention periods. So Wanne, if you are all right with that, I'm going to stop sharing here and leave it up to you.
Yes. All right. Oh, the whole screen changed when you did that, so I need to kind of find my button again. Here we go. Let me just share my screen here. So, hi everyone. I'm Wanne Pamelaar. I'm the co-founder for Filerskeepers and currently its CEO. We are a global startup basically, and what we do is we read all the laws in the world. I'm not kidding, and then we take from their rules that tell companies how long they should or could store their data, and then we help apply those rules and data to the data and records of our clients. And we are really excited about our partnership with DPM. DPM is growing really fast, is launching really amazing products, and we're very proud to kind of tap in with the little bit of knowledge that we have on data retention. And that little bit of knowledge, just to kind of give you a bit of an idea, is that we read all the laws. We currently have 267 jurisdictions online. Jurisdictions, we mean countries on a national level, but also or federal level, but also states. Yeah, so it could be the US federal. It could also be New York or California. Today, I don't want to really zoom in on the product. Will give you a bit of a demonstration of a few examples, of course, but I just want to talk about, retention basically. And, as a theme for today, I basically chose, privacy is knowing how long to keep your data basically. It's a lot of, we're all getting more in control of our GDPR compliance, and we tick the boxes, and then that last tiny thing, leaves usually is kept unchecked, and that is how long do we keep our data? It's a difficult question. So data retention also kind of coincides with the new normal, right? We had the pandemic, it's over, but it did change us forever. We started to work remotely more. I saw a study that people are longing, maybe, or at least the older generations are longing for the situation where we could just walk about in an office space and meet each other coincidentally again. And and I guess the newer generations are just so happy with all the efficiency that remote work has brought. But then, when you work online, everything gets digitized, and when everything gets digital, it might also become we start to process way more data as a result, and it's structured, it's unstructured, and it's hard to kind of manage all of that in an efficient way. So, and it poses risks, right? Cybersecurity risks, privacy risks, etc. So has been thanks to the GDPR and many other privacy laws around the world, people are now investing heavily in the field of privacy and cybersecurity and data governance, and that has led to more structured data, more ethical data practices, and so that's it. But that one question: how long do you need to keep your records? Yeah. And that's a huge question, and it's not an easy one. Let's first just zoom in very quickly on what a record is in my mind. Yeah. A business record is basically any piece of information, whether it be hard copy, electronic, audio, visual, structured, unstructured, it doesn't matter. Yeah. In the past, especially in the old-fashioned records management practice, a business record was really the final version of something that everybody agreed this is the final, and then it was on paper and we put it in a file cabinet, and later on it ended up in a box. Yeah. It's not that easy anymore nowadays with collaborative workspaces, workflows. Everything is data driven. We're all working on the same document. What is the final version, right? A document becomes more like a complete audit log, with all the different changes that people are making in a record. So it's more like a flow of data, basically, rather than it is one final thing. So we are kind of letting that go at the moment. We don't care as much anymore if something is a final copy or not. We want to kind of capture all the data, basically, that's generated in view of building a record. And it's also data fields nowadays, right? It's also GDPR data, personal data, etc. Now, the main question that companies have to ask themselves is, am I going to keep or delete? And let's start on the right end here. You want to remember, right? Your data represents tremendous value to you. Not just having it. I think you need to use the data in order to generate that value, but it starts with having it available. Of course, there are lots of laws that tell you to keep your data. And sometimes in a litigation, having the data can mean the difference between winning or losing a case if you really need to prove your position, basically. On the other hand, you need to forget. And that's because laws tell you no longer than necessary, or give you very specific guidance on, destruction of records. So you're not allowed to keep everything forever. There's also the cybersecurity. I don't think it's on this slide, but there's a cybersecurity element, right? The more data you hold on to, if you get hacked, the bigger the breach. So you may want to minimize that risk. There are quite some companies that tell us, let's get rid of it because I don't want to be caught and I don't want to keep evidence on things that we shouldn't have done. Might not be the most ethical practice, but we do get this a lot. And then we have also the view that large amounts of data are basically perceived as unmanageable. Yeah, so I'm not really convinced because the systems are getting smarter and smarter. But sometimes getting rid of all the rot data, the redundant, obsolete, and trivial data might make sense to make it a bit less fuzzy. The privacy laws have changed our perception of records retention and records management. In the past, the practice of records management was just paper-based, very straightforward. We all had to put it in a file, in a cabinet or box. Then the dawn of the internet came and cloud computing came, and everybody kind of let go of the retention. We didn't see many projects there, and everybody was like, yeah, let's just kind of implement those systems rather than focus on retention. So what you are likely to have is a whole lot of data stemming from maybe years ago, maybe even decades ago, and now GDPR came and it's that unchecked box, and now you are reading words that are like no longer than necessary. Data minimization, archiving, So what does that mean? Well, it has changed the practice of retention. No longer than necessary is a hard concept, right? You basically need to ask yourself, why am I, how long do I want to keep this? Yeah, under the GDPR. Okay, I want to keep this 3 years. Why is that? Well, we can get questions from customers. Okay, great. Can you prove that? That's what a regulator would ask you. Can you prove this? Well, yes, I can. Okay, great. What if it were to be 1.5 years? Let's turn it around. What would happen? It's not 3 years. You're only allowed to keep this 1.5 years. What would happen then? Something would break. I'm sorry, we need 3 years. That's what your business will say. Okay, can you prove that part, right? That something will break. Yes, because we can't see this one trend anymore or something, yeah? Okay, great. Now you've proven necessity. The standard of proving necessity is way higher than a lot of companies think, yeah? So you need to kind of be prepared. And it's not easy, right? Because real deletion is irreversible, is auditable. Real anonymization is irreversible, is auditable, yeah? You have to be able to be accountable for your practices. When something is gone, it should really be gone. A little while ago, I think it was 1.5 weeks ago, I was sitting with a big Japanese multinational, and we were testing the deletion within Workday. And it was all dummy data, and we were all sitting there, and we were hitting the delete button. It was a very solemn moment, and we all held our breath, like, what's going to happen? And then we hit delete, and then we were all looking at each other. What's happening? And then, yeah, it's really gone, right? There's no way we can get this back. It was just dummy data. Interesting, right? So it is hard to say goodbye, but it is what is required, yeah? And of course, you can do anonymization. That's a whole different discussion. Happy to do another webinar about that part. I think I'm going to skip this one for now. So do you think it's just EU or California? That's not the case anymore. The FTC, the Federal Trade Commission in the US, is also now probably sick and tired of waiting for a US federal privacy law. And they don't have one still, right? We have the CPRA in California. Some states are in launching privacy laws. But the FTC is now reading a complete federal privacy law in its Section 5 of the FTC Act. And that is, a prohibition of unfair trade practices, yeah? So they're now saying, hey, if you have a data breach, you need to notify. If you don't, that's an unfair practice. But if you don't, you should have a retention schedule. If you don't have that, it's an unfair business practice, yeah? And you can see that in their recent orders in GoodRx, Drizzly, and Cafe Press. And they basically required all those companies to have a retention schedule. That's interesting. They don't have an opinion on how long you keep data in the US yet, yeah? They just want you to have a retention schedule with an end period. There should be a moment that you're going to delete the data. So even in the US, this already applies. And these, it's real, we see more and more cases of and enforcement in the EU coming up. And I actually, as a practitioner, did a few of those. And they really come in and they go like, show me the app. Your administrator will show the application level. They go, no, I need to see the database level. So you go up onto the level of the database, and they go per line item in the database, like, why do you have this? Who has access to it? And then how long are you keeping this? And then they will ask the questions, why are you keeping this? And then you say, well, 6 months. Why? Well, because I can expect questions. Then they literally will say, prove it. Yeah. I had a client, and they had to go back and prove the 6 months, and they were silent for like 3 weeks, and the deadline was looming, and I was very nervous. And then they came back and they said, we got something. Here was a lady that asked the question 4 months later. Okay, great. So we took that to the regulator, and guess what they said? That, okay, you've proven your retention period for 4 months now, not 6 months. So your new retention period will be 4 months, right? And the client was not willing to litigate that in court, so we were kind of stuck with that. So, but that's how we see this. So you need actually a retention policy. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Wanne, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I think this is very interesting, especially for companies that didn't have that kind of audit so far. So just for my curiosity, when you have a DPA doing the audit, like you described, do they typically come for this to check the data retention, or do they come for maybe potential data breach or something else, and then they check this along the way?
Yeah. So I think as a theme, what we see both in the US and in the EU, they usually come in because of something else. Yeah, it is a breach, it's a complaint, it's a whistleblower. Yeah, and it can be anything. Yeah, but it's a very easy thing to prove for them. Yeah, they just go like, why do you have this? What's the purpose? How long? How long does this go back? And then you have to just say. I do think that there are a few cases already where data retention is becoming the sole focus of the case, but then the complaint or the whistleblowing was about the retention. Yeah. So so there is some case law now pending at the ECJ, the European Court of Justice, on that part. I think it's about credit collection agents or credit rating agencies that actually want to kind of by proxy apply the same retention period as applies to the government to themselves, but while they're not governmental agencies. So that's what they're trying to kind of argue there. Yeah, it's usually kind of like a side catch to an investigation. Yeah. So you need a bit of you need actually a retention policy based on actual laws. Yeah, and that's what Filerskeepers does. We literally read from A to Z for each country, or from 2023 all the way back to the very first law that we can find. We look for federal, national laws, state, provincial laws, subsidiary legislation, regulatory guidance. If there's a privacy regulator with a notable opinion, or or any tax authority or any other industry-specific authority, we will cover those rules. And that's what you can also see in DPM. We'll look at a few examples in a little bit, where we've done the research and you can just find it. Because one of the major challenges that we saw, and that's also one of the reasons for a DPM and Filerskeepers to start collaborating, is you have to fill in your records of processing activities. You have to do your your assessments and everything. And then there's this one question, and that is, how long are you keeping the data? And it's a very hard question, and very often, you look for guidance, right? On how long to do that. And basically, every single law in the world has a large chance of having a retention period. And why is that? Because legislatures, they want you to comply with all kinds of rules. And how do they want to make sure that you comply with them? Well, by imposing a retention obligation to keep the data and records. So when they come and audit you, you have the data ready available. Yeah. So that's where a lot of those retention rules come. And that's why we need to read all the laws in the world, basically. Shall we already have a little look at an example? Me, Marijan, if I start talking, I don't stop. So maybe I need to discipline myself.
It's okay. So let me share the screen. You should be able to see DPM.
Yep.
Okay. And we can go to just to browse and search through Filerskeepers database.
Yep.
Can we use Netherlands?
Yeah, let's use the Netherlands. I mean, it's a Eurovision Song Festival, so greetings from the Netherlands, I guess. Yeah, let's go for HR, maybe as a first one, and let's start at the very beginning of the employee life cycle. Let's do candidates, and then yeah, there you go. So So here you go. These are the two retention obligations for candidates' records in the Netherlands. And the reason why I wanted to show this one first is that, you know, I made the point that we read also guidance from data protection authorities. And as you can see in the 1, 2, 3, 4th column here, it says legal reference, and it actually says guidance from the Dutch Data Protection Authority. Yeah. So we have read all the guidance from the Data Protection Authority in the Netherlands. And what they basically say is you need to keep this for, if you do job interviews and you reject a candidate, if you hire them, at least theoretically, all their data flows into the personnel file. So if you reject the candidate, then you can keep their records on file for 4 weeks. It's a very short retention period. It's one of the shortest in Europe, if not the shortest. And however, with the consent, you can now keep it 1 year. Yeah. And if you want to keep it even longer, you need to kind of ask for consent again. So that's the one below. Yeah. So all the citations come with an explanation, a legal reference, but also a link to the official publication of the law or the guidance. Yeah. So here, maybe you can set it to English. Maybe not do like that because yeah. So here you can see applications, and then in the smaller header below applications, you can see retention period for application data, right? And here's 4 weeks, and then this paragraph below, it says actually 1 year, yeah? So this is where you can actually check our work because, you know, you should. Don't just believe us. Please always check if we got it right. We you know, we actually scrape government portals, and we really try to, you know, be almost real time in the updates, but hey ho, it's still a human exercise for a large part, so we can have a bit of a delay sometimes of a few days or weeks to implement a change. So it's always good to kind of check if everything still looks good. Now, we don't only look at guidance, of course, we also look at the law. So maybe we could go, let's stay in the Netherlands. Maybe we can go to accounts and legal records, the first one. Yeah. Let's go to bookkeeping. It's the second one from the top. Yeah. So here you have actual citations of law. Yeah. So you see a legal reference, and it is Article 2.10 of the Dutch Civil Code. It is the overall bookkeeping term, yeah, for the books basically in general, yeah. So it's a very important citation of law because it will help you in many instances where you are dealing with financial transactions or something that you need to keep for tax and bookkeeping reasons. If you click on the little kind of like arrow to expand, like Marijan just did, you can also see like the more information on the citation. Yeah, so you can also see the from, for instance, which I think is a very important element here because it's not just 7 years; it's from the date from which the fiscal year ends. So that can potentially add an additional year to the 7 years, right? Think of the first day of the fiscal year, you need the whole fiscal year to end, and then the 7-year retention period will start. So that's always important to kind of know that. Yep. So this is 267,000 citations right under your fingertips. We have the entire continent of Europe, for instance, and an increasing number of countries around the world. This year, we want to have all countries in the world.
Yeah, Wanne, what you do in Filerskeepers, I think it's really amazing. And when I'm speaking to people and explaining what you are doing, I often get the feeling that they don't believe that you are actually reading all the laws in the world and doing the work that you are actually doing. But so far, we never had a complaint that data is not up to date or not correct, or that something is missing. So really, I think what you're doing is amazing.
Thank you. I can tell a bit more, unless I don't know if there are questions from the group, and happy to take questions. But I can tell a bit more about our background and also how we do research, if that would be interesting. But I'm also very happy to see if there are any questions.
Yeah, I think Petra, you can feel free to interrupt us with the questions at any point.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was muted and I started to talking. I think we have, firstly, we have one thank you that this is very interesting. So thank you for the kind words, but I can interrupt. This is an interesting question. So can you give us any example of a fine that was issued regarding the retention period law?
So actually it's becoming not, I think if you would have asked me that question 2 years ago, I would probably have been able to give you one example, and now it becomes plenty. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of enforcement with regards to retention, failures basically, or breaches in France. So the CNIL is issuing a lot of fines. It started with a company that at least ends with La Mondiale. I'm still struggling, so if there are any French speakers, please help me here. In which was basically it says, and this is something that CNIL does a lot, you are keeping customer data longer than 3 years without any ground. And everybody they knew that guidance from pre-GDPR times. GDPR came into force, and at the time they did not reconfirm their guidance. So I think companies were not really abiding by it. And this was the case where they basically made the point, well, you should have known that this still applies, basically, even under GDPR. And then after that, they reconfirmed. So I do think there was a bit of an issue there from a legal perspective. And I don't know if they appealed this decision, but then with that, they set the tone, and now it seems like it's like a side catch, right? Every time they do an investigation, we see also that they're investigating like a breach of 5E of the 5.1E, I think I should say, of the GDPR. So a retention breach, basically. Yeah. So that's also with Discord and some other companies. We see enforcement all over Europe, in Denmark. Yeah, there have been some fines as well. And it's not just retention. I really have to tell you that, right? You have to balance between keeping something too long or too short. And too short is also a real risk, yeah? You don't keep your books for the required minimum. Tax authorities or financial crime prosecution could doubt that you're committing fraud. So we do see directors being thrown into jail in the UK, for instance, just to give you a bit of an idea. Yeah. Any other?
Thank you, Wanne. To the next one, but before the next question, I will launch a poll. So if you are interested to know more, click yes. Then if you don't want to know more, click no. I will launch the poll now, and feel free to click the answer. The poll will be up for a few minutes, so you have time. The next question we have is, now Wanne, you can speak a bit about the background. How do you update the knowledge base?
Yeah, so I mean, and let me tell you that Filerskeepers was founded by a real life experience we had, as being working at a top tier law firm with multinationals. And one day a client came to us and said, "Hey, we're in 78 countries. Can you just let us know what the retention obligations are that are applicable to us?" And the partner we were working with said yes. He didn't realize that he had said yes to reading all the laws in 78 countries in search of a few retention periods. So client was smart, gave us a fixed fee budget, and then off we went, and we engaged 60 law firms in 78 countries. That whole project went wrong. The quality was bad. Everybody missed their deadlines, and we had to go back to those law firms, and we were caught up in between, you know, the law firms and the clients, and the client was saying this is wrong, that's wrong, and we had no way to check what those law firms were doing because all their people had left, or you know, or didn't answer their phone anymore, or they said, oh yeah, we hired this student intern, but we didn't really check their work. They've left already. I'm not sure what to do now. So all in all, we had to write off 300,000 euros in cost going over budget. And that's how the idea of Filerskeepers came to be. And we started 4.5 years ago. Now, how we do our research, we primarily do our research in-house. Yes, so we have, and this is our competitors telling us, we have the biggest dedicated research team in the world. We have over 25 researchers, I think 27 or so, sitting everywhere in the world. We try to collect language skills. They're all lawyers registered to the bar in their local country. You know, we don't necessarily, they're lawyers, so they go through our vetting process, but we don't necessarily feel that they are good retention researchers, because what we do is very niche, so not a lot of people do that outside of, so we take very good care of training them. We have 3 ongoing training calls a week. Of course, we are human beings, so we doubt. When we doubt, we will always hire a local law firm or a certified translator to help us out with the problem at hand. But it's always going to be second opinion, yeah, because we want to be in control of our research. We want you to be able to ask us, why did you write this down? And we can actually tell you. And we have 2 secret weapons. One is the economies of scale. We have a lot of business users and lawyer users that use our data every day. And if they see anything, we will hear from them, most definitely. And the other secret weapon is that we have a backend system called Jimmy that actually scrapes government portals, looks for new law coming out, and updates in law. And that kind of keeps us sharp. When the government portal is not yet connected, or if we have trouble connecting, we'll do a manual check at least twice a year, and I'm emphasizing at least. If you really follow us, then you will see changes daily in our database, and we always say, don't try to follow us, please, because you'll go crazy. Basically, yeah. So that's how we do research. Yeah.
Thank you, Wanne. And I think this is like in connection with the last questions. How many countries do you support in Filerskeepers?
So in terms of countries, and I should do this really well, but in terms of countries, we support 169 countries today, but next week that will be 170. Yeah. So our, you know, that's a national federal level. Yeah. We also have 99 states. So together that's 268 jurisdictions. Yeah. And the 99 states are everything in the US, everything of the Canadian provinces, the Australian states and territories. And now we're doing the German Länder. We have I think the top 7. And we are doing the Swiss cantons, and I think also there we have the top 7. Yeah, so we are slowly adding those. We have the most important ones, but yeah, our ambition is to get them all, basically.
Thank you, Wanne. The next question we have is, what are the most common risks when defining data retention policies?
Well, the problem is ambiguity, sometimes already within a country. I'll give you one example. In Belgium, in most countries, you have a civil law bookkeeping term and a tax accounting standard. Yeah. In most countries, those are the same length. Yeah. To kind of harmonize this, both are 7 or both are 10 years or something. And in Belgium, for instance, this year, the legislature, in its infinite wisdom, decided to change one of the 2 and raise the tax accounting standard from 7 to 10 years while keeping the civil law bookkeeping term at 7 years. So, and their idea was we are going to battle, you know, international tax evasion structures, basically, and we want to a bit more time. Okay, great, but now we need to make a decision. So that's the first thing that you kind of have to work out, you know, what is it you need to do? We would say 2 to 10 years, just to be sure. But that's the first thing. Then the second thing is conflicts between countries. Yeah. So one country can tell you maximum 5, the other ones can say minimum 50 years, and you need to kind of deal with that complexity. And that's also kind of something that we are really interested in kind of looking into and kind of making sense of that. But you will be forced to make decisions there because you can't comply with both at the same time. Ideally, you comply on a per country level. Yeah, that's the platinum level of compliance. If you can't, you need to think of something that's called like a golden standard. What's the most optimal retention period given all the countries you're in? Yeah, and that's a decision you would then have to make. But that's definitely the next level, and something that we can also talk to you about for our joint roadmap to see if we can get that into DPM.
Thank you. We have a few questions left, and the next one is, what is the level of automation when it comes to data retention obligations?
Do you mean in determining them, or do you mean in actual storage of records and data? Like, you know, do you need to have digital records, or should you keep them on paper? What do you think?
I think, Wanne, you can answer like.
Okay. So the level of automation. So I mean, look, in terms of determining, it's still a man-made assessment. Usually, there's things you can do, but every company is different, and the regulations and the risk appetite is different. So we always recommend, you know, study the data and make your decisions. And if you need a bit of help, you know, I think there will be lots of folks maybe from DPM in Intelligentsia that can help, or we can help. You know, it's all fine. Yeah. But in terms of like, you know, do you need to digitalize what you have, or is it prohibited? Do you need to keep things on paper? Post pandemic, we don't see any rules coming out anymore that say that you need to keep something on paper.
And Wanne,
that's kind of yeah.
Wanne, if I may add, when it comes to automation, that's in our territory, and we have a lot of experience of helping companies actually do the automation of orchestration.
Got it. Yeah.
And it means that you want the system to be able to automatically prepare candidates for data removal, whether it's anonymization or deletion, according to the rules which are configured. So for the configuration of the rules, we use Filerskeepers as the input, and basically from them to the moment when the data is actually anonymized in the systems, it is an implementation project, typically where we need to do the integration with different systems where data actually resides, and then start the anonymization process. And like you said, it needs to be removed, but it also needs to be auditable. So you need to keep logs of everything that was done. And yeah, it can be automated. And basically automation is the only way you can try to make yourself compliant in a complex environment where you keep maybe even hundreds of systems and millions or billions of data records. Automation is the only way, and this is what we do with DPM, and we use Filerskeepers to fuel that part for the configuration of the rules.
Yep. Now I understand the question, and that should have been my answer. Yeah. Thanks, Marijan.
Marijan, I think this is the addition of the question that you answered right now. So if I understood right, Filerskeepers is a part of DPM. Can it be connected to some kind of a processing activity?
Yeah. So Filerskeepers is Filerskeepers, but in DPM, we use it to provide both information to the users of DPM, but also we use it in a way that when defining the processing activities and data retention periods for data categories, for specific processing activities, then the users can actually browse through the Filerskeepers, select the records that are applicable to that processing activity and assign it to the processing activity. And then they will have it in the ROPA, but they will also have an individual report called the data retention report with all the processing activities and with all the warnings where retention periods are not defined maybe, and with all the details coming from the filers keepers about what needs to be stored, who needs to store it, how long they need to store it, and so on.
Exactly.
Thank you. Thank you both. So that was the last question. If you have anything you want to add at the end, feel free, Wanne or Marijan.
I just want to thank Wanne because I think he's always so interesting. For me, it's always so interesting to hear what he has to say because the filers keepers business is so specific and niche and so smart, and I'm always like very excited when we do things together and webinars together. So Wanne, thank you again for joining us and for sharing the knowledge with everyone.
Well, my pleasure. And I mean, you know, we always scout for very, very promising companies, and DPM is definitely one of them, and a real European leader in retention, in data protection and data governance, I'd say. You're definitely branching out. So very proud to make retention real. Our ambition is to solve records retention once and for all, and we can't do that alone. We need you guys. So thanks for making this real.
Thank you both.
Right.
Thank you, Wanne, for this lovely words. And I would like to thank everyone for joining this webinar, for joining the other webinars we had as well. Thank you very much, and looking forward to seeing you all again in our next webinar. And thank you, everyone who came today. We will share the recording with them as well. So see you next time.
Everybody have a lovely day.
Yeah, nice day.